So this week's Torah portion is Parshat Re'eh, which means see. Begin, see, I've placed before you the blessing and the curse. God, through Moshe, speaks to the Israelites and says, if you obey my commandments, you'll be blessed. If you don't, you'll be cursed. There's a long list of curses. There are other things that are part of the Torah portion this week. But I want to focus on two verses in our Torah parasha. And they say, Va'avartem et hayarden, and when you cross the Jordan, V'yeshavtem ba'aretz asher Adonai Elohechem manchil etchem, and you dwell in the land which Eternal, your God, will lead you into. V'niach lachem b'kol oivechem mesaviv, and God gives you respite from all the enemies that surround you. V'yeshavtem betach, and you dwell in safety. V'yah makom asher yivchar Adonai Elohechem, then the place which God chooses L'shaken Shmo Sham, to dwell there and to place his name there. Shama taviu et kol asher anochem atzaveh etchem. There you shall bring all that I command you, and goes to list of different types of sacrifices. So when you cross the land, into the land which God is leading you into, and God gives you respite from all your enemies that surround you, then the place which God chooses to establish God's name, you shall bring the offerings. We find a teaching in the Talmud, in Sanhedrin, a teaching by Rabbi Yosei, that says when the Israelites entered the land, they had to do 3 mitzvot. They had to appoint for themselves a king, they had to cut off the seed of Amalek, and they had to build a temple for God. We find in the book of Deuteronomy, the book that we're reading now, the last book of the Torah, the laws of kings, which we read next week. And it's the first time that this appears in the Torah. The idea that the Israelites didn't need a king because God is the sole ruler. God led them out of Egypt. But finally we come to Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy, which says that if you should appoint for yourself a king, knowing of course that all the other nations had kings, and it was more likely than not that Israel would demand a king, the king should do X, Y, Z, which we'll come to next week. So once you're in the land, appoint yourself a king. The teaching Rabbi Yosei asks the question of what comes first. So the first is appoint yourself a king. The second is to cut off the seed of Amalek, as I mentioned. The third is to build a temple. And it gives a quote from the Torah, Ki yad al kes yah melchama Adonai ba'Amalek. The hand upon the throne of the Eternal will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. What is a case? A kisei? Kisei is a chair or a throne. You can't have a throne without a king. So obviously, first you appoint yourself a king. Then you turn to the next 2 mitzvot, getting rid of Amalek and building a temple. Amalek was a leader of a nation, the Amalekites, who attacked the Israelites soon after they left Egypt. The Torah says that the Amalekites attacked the Israelites at the rear, attacked the vulnerable, the young children, the women, the elderly men. And explicitly states that Amalek had no fear of God. As the story goes, Joshua bin Nun, the leader, led the Israelite warriors against the Amalekites and eventually prevailed. We find in the book of, that story is found in the book of Shemot, the book of Exodus, but the book of Deuteronomy have a law which says we shall never forget Amalek, must wipe out his memory from the face of the earth, never to forget. And that's the reason why on Purim, because Haman, according to the story of Megillat Esther, Haman was a descendant of Amalek. We make a noise whenever Haman's name is mentioned when you read Megillat Esther, to drown out his name, to follow this commandment, to wipe out the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. So, after appointing himself a king, we have 2 commandments: to cut off the seed of Amalek, destroy Amalek, and then to build a Beit Mikdash, a temple. Which comes first? They say, quoting the verse from our parasha, והניח לכם מכל אויביכם מסביב וישבתם בטח. When God gives you respite from all the enemies that surround you and you dwell in security. והיה המקום אשר יבחר אדוני אלוהיכם בו לשכן שמו שם. Then the place which God chooses to establish God's name there, you shall bring offerings. So the order, according to the teaching of Rabbi Yosef, is first to destroy Amalek, and then when you have respite from your enemies, you build a temple. So if you look at these three mitzvot from a metaphorical point of view, a king first, you appoint a king. King represents ruler, represents a person's conscience. So first, you have to elevate your internal conscience as an individual. Amalek represents the antithesis of our Jewish values. Had no fear of God. We need to, with ourselves, defeat the urge to do wrong, to be selfish, and to be deceitful. We conquer that by first appointing a king, our conscience, and we suppress all the wrongs that we are tempted to perform. Once you've done that, then you can truly build a Beit Mikdash. You can build a temple, a shrine to God. Once we have elevated our conscience, destroyed our inclination to do bad things, then we ourselves become a temple to God. Can you hear it, son? Amen.